This is Éric Duhaime, the current leader of the Conservative Party of Quebec, and I consider his party to be the most useless one in the current of the big parties. However, they are expected to win some seats in the National Assembly for the first time in history. One thing I was really surprised is how far away the party got started. It debuted in 2009 but got so little success in every elections. That is until the 2022 Quebec election, where they did their best results, having like 14% of the popular vote, but they were unable to win a single seat. Having conservative in their name, you might think to yourself that they are a right-wing party, and you would be correct. However, they might differ a bit from your typical conservative party you might find around the world. Like, are they a religious right-wing party? No, not at all. They don't have any sorts of religious right-wing connotation. If they did, that would pretty much doom them from having any real chance of winning an election. Generally speaking, around the world, older folks are more religious, and some of them would like their society to go back in a more religious way, but that's not really the case in Quebec. The baby boomers of the province have lived throughout the Quiet Revolution, a period of time that saw the secularization of the province, and the importance of the church was greatly decreased. So no, there's not some big appetite among the old Quebecers to bring back religion. Besides, Éric Duhaime is an openly gay man, so I really don't picture him being this arbiter of Quebec right-wing Catholicism. Okay, but are the party like anti-woke? And definitely yes, Éric Duhaime is constantly babbling about the woke left, that according to him, the wokes are seeking to divide Quebecers, and even go as far as to call François Legault a woke, which is unbelievably fucking rich. And Duhaime made his political mission to liberate Quebec from the woke. Pretty typical talking point for a right-wing party. The problem for Duhaime is that he hardly got the monopoly on the woke fear-mongering. Another one being François Legault, which despite being called a woke by Duhaime, Legault himself talked a lot about the danger of woke culture. Another anti-woke warrior being Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, the leader of Parti Québécois, which is funny since PQ is generally considered a center-left party. So when you got the center-left guy yapping about the woke mind virus, then Duhaime is hardly your only option if all you care about is to fight the pink-hair feminist. And then the party has some positions that are just kind of weird. On immigration, Duhaime said that the province is accepting too many immigrants, and he even wants to impose a civilized compatibility test towards immigrants, which Duhaime claimed that they would select immigrants with Western values and the capacity to integrate with the cultures of Quebec. Some claim that this is basically a dog whistle, meaning that the Conservative Party will discriminate towards immigrants that do not come from a majority white country. Discrimination especially towards Muslim immigrants. This is typical rhetoric for a pretty far-right party, but at the same time, Duhaime spoke on immigration in a pretty positive manner. Like Duhaime spoke that accepting 50,000 immigrants per year in Quebec that the CAQ government is aiming is a respectable target. Since the Conservative is more to the right than CAQ, you sorta expect them to want a lower number of immigrants than CAQ. Also, Éric Duhaime has criticized François Legault on his rhetoric against immigrants. Yes, Duhaime is saying that Legault is being too hard on immigrants and overusing them as a scapegoat for everything that is wrong in the province. Okay. Listen, the guy is entitled to his own opinion, but in terms of political strategy, it is such a weird position to be like super harsh on immigrants, but at the same time kinda lenient. Is there any political position that they have that are unique, that really distinguish them from the rest? In my opinion, yes, there is 3 points. First is their right-wing conspiracy theory and fear-mongering. The Conservative Party of Quebec is the only party in Quebec politics who was big in COVID-19 skepticism and misinformation. As such, they sort of got the sole monopoly of people who were mad about the vaccine and COVID lockdown. In fact, the year when the Conservative got on the map of Quebec politics is in the 2022 election, after 2 years of COVID lockdown and restriction, orchestrated by the Legault government. Although Duhaime has dabbled in other sort of right-wing made-up panic, like drag queen poisoning the mind of the youth, or gender theory being this dangerous shit, let's be real, none of these moral panic has brought him as much support than his skepticism towards the COVID-19 pandemic. As much as this COVID-19 denial brought him a ton of support, I don't think this is a reliable strategy in the long run. I might be naive, but I don't think there is enough appetite for right-wing panic in Quebec to make you win an election. It was the COVID-19 restriction that made some boomers lose their fucking mind, and they decided to put their support for the only party that was against COVID restriction. But COVID is long behind us, and I suspect support for this party for this sole reason will wane down. But who knows, maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's a significant portion of the population who will swear eternal loyalty to Éric Duhaime and the Conservative Party since they were the sole warrior against COVID lockdown tyranny. Their second point is their economic stance. Despite the intense gutting of the public sector by the Legault government, conventional thinking will still put the economic stance of CAQ as a center-right party. However, my man Duhaime is a capital L libertarian. Éric Duhaime co-founded Le Réseau Liberté Québec, a gather-up of enthusiasts of right-wing economic idea. The organization went bust in 2013. He was once an administrator to the Institut pour la démocratie du travail, a pretty innocent-sounding name, but the organization is in fact trying to weaken the trade union ability to negotiate. And according to a publication made by La Presse, Éric Duhaime's parents admitted that when Duhaime was a teenager, he had a poster of Margaret Thatcher in his bedroom. Oh my god. Unlike his other position, which can be unclear and messy, his libertarian economic stance is his clearest and strongest conviction. Unfortunately for him, this is also a big weakness. Something I explain in great details in my other video is that Quebec is pretty firmly a social democracy. To make it short, Quebecers are pretty okay with the state having some level of involvement in order to provide people with quality public services and welfare. Comparing that to other places in the world where the government getting too big is this big taboo, all of that means is that it's a lot harder to convince Quebecers of right-wing economic policy that it would be in other places in the world. You can't just show up and be like them fucking welfare queen and expect a standing ovation. The way François Legault pitched his right-wing economic idea is by telling Quebecers that privatization could in fact help the public sector. The public sector has too much on his shoulder and we can help it by expanding the private sectors. Plus, François Legault had this veneer of a successful businessman, someone we can achieve at bringing wealth in the province. The only problem is that he has completely failed on that front. His privatization of public services has not made things better, it has just made the system more dysfunctional and monetized. Also, he has made many partnerships with private businesses that would later go bankrupt. And the province's debt is at an all-time high. Thanks, homie. And prior to François Legault, Quebec had to suffer from the austerity politics of the Liberal Party. Some from 2 decades of downsizing the public sectors and propping up private businesses, which has led to the worsening of income inequality and the worsening of the cost of living crisis. With all of that, I think most Quebecers are not super receptive to the idea that somehow we still need to cut on the state and rely on private corporations. Enter Éric Duhaime, which will epically tell you that private mega corporation can do no wrong and that every social program is the work of Satan and that workplace regulation and trade union are cringe and that children yearn for the mines. Okay, I'm being a bit bad faith here. Duhaime doesn't sound as batshit insane as other libertarian, like, I don't know, fucking Javier Milei.
Ministerio de Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible, afuera. Ministerio de Obras Públicas, afuera. Ministerio de Ciencia y Tecnología e Innovación, algo bien del sector privado. Nada bueno salió del sector público, afuera. Ministerio de Trabajo, Empleo y Seguridad Social, afuera. Ministerio de Educación, adoctrinamiento, afuera. Ministerio de Transporte, afuera. Ministerio de Salud, afuera. Ministerio de Desarrollo Social, afuera. ¿Cómo queda?
But my point still stands that this guy is way too much of a Thatcher simp to really convince the population of his right-wing economic view. And the third unique position of the Conservative Party of Quebec is that they are the only party who want to abolish the carbon tax. Not to be confused with the federal carbon tax that Mark Carney abolished when he became the Prime Minister of Canada. No, Quebec has his very own carbon tax. I mean, not really. It's not really a tax. It's a similar thing that California also has. I don't know. To be real, I don't really fucking care about the details. But anyway, getting rid of this carbon tax thing is an official policy of the Conservative Party. It was even the main talking point of Éric Duhaime in the partial election of Athabasca. On the surface, it's not a bad talking point. Tell people that you're gonna get rid of a policy that's gonna make gassing at the pump more cheaper. Not bad. Especially with the massive rise of oil price because of these two fucking idiots. The only problem for Duhaime is that he is in Quebec. Quebec energy is 98% renewable energy. So the fossil fuel industry lobby in Quebec is pretty weak, and without the help of the devilish fossil fuel industry, your big talk of getting rid of a carbon tax is not really the thing that's going to excite most people. And relying on abolishing this carbon tax thing cost him his partial election. So now, can you see why I call them useless? Either they have position that the other more powerful party also have, or they have weird position, or the unique position or thing that most Quebecers wouldn't really care. Even with that, the Conservative Party of Quebec is stronger than ever, which they are expected to win some seats. Despite the unpopularity of their political stance, how come they are expected to make their best result yet? It's simple. A very large portion of their support are ex-CAQ supporters. With the less than desirable economic performance of the CAQ government, many just abandoned François Legault's party and decided to join another party that is the most closely aligned to CAQ. One thing for sure is that these two parties cannot coexist for long. There's not enough people in Quebec who are economically right-wing to make two right-wing parties stand on their feet. As long as these two parties are there, then it's pretty much guaranteed that Quebec won't be held by a right-wing party anytime soon. One of them has to go, and that very depends if CAQ can bounce back from their current unpopularity. François Legault is the face and leader of CAQ ever since its creation, but with his current unpopularity, he has decided to resign and let someone else take the realm. And many believe that without him, the party will just fade into nothing. If the new leadership is able to keep the party afloat, then the Conservative Party will go, or possibly even merge with CAQ. But if CAQ die, then the Conservative Party could likely become the de facto right-wing party in Quebec. However, if that were to happen, then I suspect that the party will shift more to the center in order to have a more mainstream appeal. And the party would be led by someone that is less polarizing than Éric Duhaime, someone who can achieve at selling a right-wing economic view to the Quebec population. Even though I'm sure that if the Conservative Party were to ever win an election, and it wouldn't be with Éric Duhaime at the helm, but Duhaime can somewhat be proud of himself to have put the Conservative Party on the map.